Hi, this is Jerry Mathers from Leave It to Beaver, and this is the Then Is Now podcast.
Warning, warning!
Today's episode contains
spoilers.
So if you have not seen the movie or TV show that we are talking about, we highly recommend that you watch it first, then listen to this episode. Thank you.
Welcome to 13 Days of Hallowtober.
Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
Hello and welcome to this special episode of Then Is Now podcast. I am your host, Rigor. On this episode, I am joined once again by frequent guest co-host, a man who loves the whooshing noises of deadlines as they go by, Spency.
Hello.
How's it going, Spence?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good for me. Yeah. How about you?
Good, good. And on my right is a guy who doesn't think he gets even, Patsy the Angry Nerd. Welcome back, Pat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do my best. I try to, shoot from the hip, and if I get even, I get even. Sometimes I'll get odd.
Oh, there you go. Evens or odds. Awesome. Real quick, I just wanted to mention my wife and I went and saw Halloween Kills last night, and that was great. I really loved it. Have you guys had a chance to see it yet?
Not yet.
Not I, Lord.
Okay. The only thing I will say about it, then, is, and even for the listeners at home, if you haven't seen it, of course, keep in mind it's part 2 of the last trilogy here, so they don't necessarily feel the need to wrap certain things up in this particular movie. But otherwise, I thought it was solid. So let's get into it. For those who don't know, we are in the middle of our yearly event called 13 Days of Hallowtober. Our theme this year is modern zombie films, which are films that came after and were inspired by George Romero's Night of the Living Dead in 1968, which not only set up the rules for modern zombies, but has also had a lasting effect on horror filmmaking and horror media for the last 50 years. Today, we're going to travel to South Korea and take the train to Busan from 2016. And I just want to warn people that even though we do it with pretty much every movie, and there's a warning at the top of the show, we're going to spoil the fuck out of this movie. So go and see it first. I think as of this recording, which is sort of mid to late October, it was on Amazon Prime. So check it out. Class is in session.
저기요, 이상한 사람이 하나 타고 있는 것 같은데.
팀장님, 여기 11호차 응급 환자 발생했습니다.
알려주세요. 아직까지 남의 안에 열려있다니까. 그냥 이것들 달고 부산으로 갑시다, 바로. 시티 몇 호칸? 무슨 일이 벌어지는지 몰라? 우리 열차는 더 이상 부산으로 운행할 수가 없게 됐습니다.
So let's get into the synopsis here. So a chemical leak at a biotech plant causes the start of a zombie apocalypse that rapidly spreads across South Korea. Fund manager Si Suk-woo is a cynical workaholic and divorced father. Oh, look at that. He's 2 for 2. His young daughter, Suan, wants to spend her birthday with her mother in Busan. He tries to soothe her with a gift of a Wii, forgetting that she already has one. He watches a video of Suan suffering from stage fright while singing Aloha Oi at a recital he could not attend. Oh, there's the trifecta there, missing the the recital. Overcome with guilt, he decides to take her to Busan via an early KDX 101 train from Seoul Station, which just sounds like, a 70s TV show.
Right.
Other passengers include working class man Yoon Sang-hwa and his pregnant wife Seong Kyung, selfish COO Yeon Suk, he does suck, a high school baseball team that includes baseball player Mi Young-guk and his girlfriend, the cheerleader Kim Jin-hee, train attendant Ki Chu, elderly sisters In-gil and Jong-gil, and a homeless stowaway. As the train departs, signs of chaos from the infection reach the station, and an infected woman runs aboard unnoticed just before the doors close. Of course she does. She soon turns into a zombie, naturally, attacks an attendant, and many crew and passengers are quickly turned into zombies. The remaining passengers secure themselves in the front and rear cars, observing that the infected zombies only attack if they can see or hear them, but they cannot operate the train's doors. So they're they're kind of like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, but not as good as the Velociraptors from Jurassic Park.
Right.
They learned from news reports of the rapidly spreading epidemic across the country, and Suk-woo discovers the biotech plant was connected to his business. He uses his connections to try and secure safe travels for Suan and himself. That seems like it would be the opposite of what would happen. It's like, you did this? Well, let's make sure you are safe.
Right.
The train stops at Daejeon Station, supposedly secured by the South Korean army. The passengers disembark into a vacant station, which they should have fucking realized was a problem, but soon find the soldiers have become zombies who quickly charge the group. See? What'd I say? Several passengers are attacked and killed as they race back to the train, while most of the surviving ones safely board the front cars. Suan, Seong-kyung, In-gil, and the homeless man find themselves between two cars of zombies and manage to take shelter in the restrooms. Well, that's good. Suk-woo, Young-guk, Sang-hwa, and two of Young-guk's three surviving classmates, having stayed back to provide cover, race aboard the moving train, though Young-guk's friends are killed and infected during the escape and end up in the back cars. The captain drives the train to Busan after learning it has been established as a quarantine zone. Learning of their trapped loved ones, Suk-woo's group uses the darkness of tunnels along the route to cross the zombie-filled cars and rescue them. The group continues moving towards the safe front cars, but inadvertently alerts the zombies, of course, in the last car before the safe one. Suk-woo and Sang-hwa stay back to hold the doors closed while the others escape, but Yeon-suk has convinced Ki-chul and the other passengers they are potentially affected and should not help. After hearing her boyfriend calling, Jin-hee attempts to save them, but is restrained by the other passengers. Sang-hwa is bitten and infected and sacrifices himself to give Suk-woo the time to get the others to safety. In-gil sacrifices herself too to give time to the other survivors to lock the door. Yeon-suk and Ki-chul lead the other passengers into the front cars and force Suk-woo's group into a closed vestibule, believing they are infected. Jong-gil is shaken by the passenger selfishness, and after thanking In-gil for everything, lets the zombies into the front car, killing the other survivors, though Yeon-suk and Ki-chul manage to escape into a restroom. The train is forced to stop near East Daegu train station due to a blocked track, forcing the survivors to seek a new train. Yeon-suk, in his escape, pushes Ki-chul, Jin-hee, and the captain into a pack of zombies because he's a piece of shit. Young-guk stays with Jin-hee until she reanimates and kills him. An out-of-control train causes a derailment, trapping Suk-woo, Suan, Seong-kong, and the homeless man under a train car. The homeless man sacrifices himself to hold back a zombie horde while the others escape out a small hole, finding a working locomotive. After releasing a train from a horde of zombies holding it back, they head towards Busan when a zombified Yeon-suk attacks Suk-woo and bites him before Suk-woo can throw him from the engine. Knowing he will turn into a zombie, he quickly teaches Seong-kyung how to operate the train and says his farewells to his sobbing daughter before succumbing to the virus and throwing himself off the engine. Seong-kyung and Suan are forced to stop at a blocked train tunnel just before Busan and walk. At the tunnel's exit, the military snipers prepare to fire until they hear Suan sob singing Aloha Oi and realize that the pair are human and help them to safety.
Nice.
So that's pretty much all of it. But
yep.
And so we'll see you next time. No, so obviously we'll get more into it because y'all suck. Like that was
y'all suck. Yeah.
He was terrible.
So Spence, I'm trying to remember, when did you first see this, and what was your first impression?
I saw this a couple of weeks ago with you.
Oh, that's right.
And I've only actually ever seen it that one time. But my first impression was it was a very excellent zombie film, and it just a very excellent film in general. I thought it hit a lot of the emotional notes, and the characters were well thought out, well written. Nobody was left behind in a writing sense. And the zombies I thought were done effectively, and they had a couple of new rules and things like that, and it was really, really interesting. So my first impression was that it was really, really good.
Nice. Pat?
I saw this a couple of years ago when I had some time to watch a movie with subtitles, and I'd heard a lot of really good things about this. So I was like, oh, let me check this out. And I really liked it. And again, Jan Suk can, get fucked because
Yeah.
he's such a dick. Like, he really is. And, like, even after everything he did, after all his selfishness and his greed and his just absolute, like, contempt for everyone else, it didn't matter. He turned into a zombie and got eaten anyways.
Right. Oh man, I saw this shortly after it was released on Netflix. I think it was one of those ones that I didn't actually start watching it till, like you said, I heard people start raving about it, how good it was and everything, and I think I watched the trailer, or at least the first half of the trailer, and I was sold. So I remember being floored by how tense it was, and even though I watched it again, like Spence said, we watched it a month ago or a few weeks ago, and then I watched it again yesterday. I was tense as fuck and on the edge of my seat the whole time, even yesterday. So it's one of these rare movies that really keeps you on the edge across repeated viewings. And there's so much to love about this film, and we'll get into that here. So let's talk about the director. We've got Sang Ho Yun, who he also directed a bunch of things, including Soul Station, that 70s disco show.
Yes.
An animated prequel to Train, which I did start watching last night, but I didn't get a chance to finish it. And it's really interesting because did you see that one, Pat?
I have not. It's been on my list for a long time. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh, okay.
I have to wait until I have, not just the time, but the ability. Because, like, if it's like 2 a.m, it's like, oh, I finally have the time to watch this. Oh, but I'm like super tired and can't read.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I started it. I watched probably the first half hour only because of time constraints. It's good. I'm willing to see if it. There's a point in the movie that in Train to Busan that I'm wondering if they're going to address in this prequel. So I don't want to say any more about it except that I didn't care too much for the characters, and I'm hoping that as it picks up, they'll make you like the characters more in this. But then he also directed Peninsula, which is the sequel to Train to Busan, which also I haven't seen yet either. So
Same.
Then Sang Ho Yen also wrote. He wrote the movie along with Joo Suk Park, and the only other thing that this guy Joo Suk Park has written was a movie called Hua Yi, a Monster Boy from 2013. It kind of looks interesting. He also directed that too. Diving into our cast here, we've got Gong Yoo as Seok Woo, the fund manager that you mentioned, his wife left him because he was selfish. Apparently, he plays the salesman on a few episodes of Squid Game, which I have not seen. And
I haven't
You
yet
watched that,
either.
right, Pat? Oh, I thought you guys did. Okay.
No,
I haven't seen it either.
Okay. He's a bit of a selfish dick here, but not quite as douchey as the other guy. But by the time he learns his lesson, of course, it's too fucking late for him. Then we've got Sue Ann Nivens, of course, played by Betty White. She's the foil to Mary Tyler Moore. Oh, wait. No, that's the wrong Sue Ann. Sue Ann Kim plays Sue Ann Seo, the daughter of Seok Woo, who wants to see her mom in Busan for her birthday. She's been in 15 things so far, and even including this year. And I thought she was really good here. I totally believed her character. Then moving on, we've got Ma Dong-seok, also known as Don Lee. That's his Anglicanized name. He, of course, is Yoon Sang-hwa, the husband of pregnant Seong Kyung. This guy was awesome. He was once a mixed martial artist trainer, and you can kind of see that in this film. And he's going to play Gilgamesh in the upcoming Marvel film Eternals. So,
Ooh.
That's going to be cool.
The Epic of Gilgamesh has its own flood myth.
I know.
So the Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the oldest stories known to man.
That's right.
We have, yeah.
And nobody knows who it is. Like, isn't he the bad guy from the Smurfs?
That's Gargamel. I mean Gargamel. Uh, yeah, he was awesome here, though. I mean, it was funny because he kept calling Seok Woo asshole and jerk throughout. Then finally, at the end, he calls him buddy right before he sacrifices his life. But that whole scene where he's holding the zombies off and because he knows he's been bitten and he's gonna turn, and then he fucking does turn, and he's still holding them off.
Yeah, it was. I think he still had the last vestiges of humanity in his head, but I would have sacrificed, y'all suck like way, way before then.
Right. Let's see. We can go through the rest of the cast here, but they're pretty much in stuff that we've never really seen. The only one I did want to mention was, as you said, Yeon Suk was played by Kim Wee Sung. He's the sort of the business executive. I think he's the SOO of the train company that runs the train. I saw him recently as King Ijo in the movie Rampant, which we're covering here on 13 Days. It's a zombie film that takes place back in Korea in the 1600s. So if you haven't seen it,
I like that.
Really,
that sounds good.
Yeah, I can get you a copy if you can't find it on a thing because it's really good. This guy is such a fucking douche. He's willing to let everybody else be killed or even kill them himself in order to save his hide. And one of the things about this movie is that he is portraying here a truly despicable human being that is probably even worse than the zombies. The zombies
no probably about it. The zombies are just doing what they do, like swarming like
Right.
piranha.
Yeah. The scary part is the fact that he almost succeeds. It's at least as shocking as watching the zombies attack because of the way he's just tossing people to the zombies so that he can save his own ass.
Yeah, especially at the point where he, cowardly claims that, our main characters are infected and we can't trust them, except for the fact that the infection seems to take hold nearly instantaneously, and they've been standing there for a solid 20 seconds. Besides that logical flaw, they get sent to the vestibule, and then the old woman there kind of sees the problem here and lets the zombies in. And that's when you're hoping that Yeon Suk has been killed. He got what he deserved, and he survives that. You can only imagine how many people he had to push into the zombies to survive that. Right. And it's just so frustrating because you're like, oh, all right, you know what? They got what they deserved. They were on the wrong side of history. And then he survives. You're like, oh no.
Boston.
So that was wild.
I had a question for you guys here. Since we did the video game episode, did you guys mention or talk about or have heard of a movie called a game called 7 Days to Die?
I've heard of it. I've never played it.
I am unfamiliar completely.
Okay. It must be an Asian game, a video game, but it's a zombie game. And I guess when they made this movie, the film team tried to reference the movements of the zombies in that game, as well as movements of the dolls from Ghost in the Shell and the nurses from Silent Hill.
I definitely saw that. I could absolutely see that inspiration. That's awesome. I loved the zombies movement in this whole movie.
Oh yeah, there was one scene where there was a soldier, and the actor must have been able to do it, but his arm was like up around the back of his head.
Yeah,
tangled up marionette type movements.
Yeah,
it was very unnatural, so it gave that vibe of like, they're definitely not human anymore, which is kind of important for especially the audience, because that first girl who gets on the train has very, very intricate movements when she kind of gets up and presents herself as the patient zero for the train, and it's a very, very disgusting thing in the best way possible.
Oh yeah, and I wanted to mention her. I'm glad you brought her up because when just before she fully transforms, she's saying something like, I'm sorry. And I wanted to know what she was sorry for, and I'm hoping that prequel animated movie will answer that question.
Maybe she was apologizing for being a zombie and what was about to happen because she couldn't face turning into a zombie on her own, and she knew she was going to just fuck everything up.
Oh, and bringing the infection on board the train. That makes sense.
Yeah, that was what I inferred from that moment.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Did you guys watch any of the making of videos on this? There's a bunch on YouTube.
No, I've not.
I was watching it. It's really fascinating. You'd think it was all done on a train. They had a set, and it was like one train car, maybe a couple of them, and most of it was shot with green screen, done as a rear screen projection. And there's even one shot like where, of course I've forgotten the character's name now. The awesome guy. Oh, Sang Hua.
Oh, okay.
Young Sang Hua. Yeah, he's running and he's got the policeman's shield and baton in his hand, and he's running to catch up the train, and he's on a green screen treadmill, not moving, but they're moving the panel of the side of the train past him.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah, so they did a lot of really innovative stuff here to make it look like they were. I really believe that they were just on. Like, I remember thinking at one point, "Wow, I wonder if they had to like rent this train for a month or something."
Well, there's a lot of like different tricks and things that you can use, like that I've found from working on, just the film that I've been working on. And if you do it right and you have a good crew, like nobody knows that, it's not like the thing that you're trying to, like with this, like, nobody will know unless they see like a making of video. Like, you don't know that it's not an actual train, or it's not, this specific location or setting. Like, it's pretty amazing what people can do.
And it's something I really loved throughout the movie was that even though it was a train with seats on either side, so it was almost like it should be almost as cramped as a plane, but the movie does not have that claustrophobia going on about it. Very much has like this detail of, we need to be here, they need to be there, and it almost you forget the seats are there and blocking the character's path because A, they're moving through it normally, and B, it never becomes a big deal until there is a level of stealth that they have to hide from the zombies with. So I thought that was really, really well done in the spatial camera work.
Yeah, I mean, Pat, what do you think about that? Because I felt like there was a claustrophobic feeling from it, especially since I found out that, well, not because I found out, but I did find out that instead of doing the normal widescreen 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio, the director used 1.85 to 1 to sort of give it a bit more of a claustrophobic feel. Did you feel that at all from the film?
I definitely got the claustrophobic feel, but this also made it seem like this was not an actual train, like not a typical train. Like, this was something specifically built for the film, because you need to have enough room for the camera, for the dolly. Like, when you're doing like these different tracking shots and you're doing the different Steadicam shots, like, you have to have enough room for the crew to operate, and like you need to have enough room for the actors to do their specific motion. So I think they made it, a little bit wider than the standard train would be, but still had it shot in such a way that, especially with the aspect ratio, that still gave that sense of cramped, claustrophobic, nowhere to escape, tension.
Yeah.
I got that claustrophobia slightly when there was a big horde of zombies running over each other like water, like a massive just wave. That's when I definitely felt a lot of the claustrophobia of people trying to run over each other. That was brutal. But when it was only a few characters just trying to push past the zombies and take a couple out, which I'm reasonably certain it was only once again I can't remember his name, the gentleman we keep raving about. I think he's the only one who has any confirmed kills of zombies in this entire movie.
Yeah, Sang-Hwa Yoon or Yoon Sang-Hwa.
Yeah, he is, I believe, the only one who has any confirmed kills, which, they don't really establish a lot of the science or the lore behind the zombies, which is perfectly fine. That's not what this is for.
Right. We can also just call him Don Lee, but I see what you're getting at. I did want to bring that up, though. We got the since, this whole series, we're talking about the zombie films in relation to The Grandfather, Night of the Living Dead, and what George Romero put out there. Now, these zombies, I made a list here. I don't think they're dead. They're not undead creatures, I should say. You guys, once I read through this list, tell me if I'm wrong on any of these points. Obviously, they're fast turning. They're fast running. The bite is what transfers the infection. They can't learn. They can't open doors. They're not evolving as zombies, although the outbreak seems like it just started at this point. It doesn't seem like headshots are necessary, although we do see the soldiers at the end targeting the woman's head. But we do find that neck-breaking hits with bats and even punches seem to take them down. They can't see in the dark. It confuses them. And they also have sort of this collective hive mind, as particularly evidenced towards the end of the movie when they're all piling on to that one train car that's finally trying to escape, and they're just like they all seem to move in unison throughout the film. I mean, do you guys disagree with any of these points?
No, I think the hive mind thing is definitely interesting and definitely feels like it's not a typical zombie outbreak, almost like it's a parasitic thing.
Yeah, they said they kind of based it on, or not that they based it on, but they kind of follow the rules of the 28 Days Later zombies.
I definitely saw a lot of that. I haven't seen 28 Days Later. It was a big moment for me when the first zombies are attacking people, and it's a quick transformation from person to zombie, and B, they would, a zombie would bite someone, and then after they've done that, turn and then bite another person, instead of just like they weren't necessarily eating people, they were infecting people intentionally. And I noticed that instantly. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is some sort of disease that wants to take over more bodies.
That's why
Right.
I was thinking like the parasite thing, because that just seems like what a parasite would do.
Yeah, that's true. And it was interesting though, because when I first saw it, back when it first came out or whatever, I was like, how is he able to just punch them and they're down, they go down? But I guess that's part of the rules of these zombies, is that he, like, what's his name, Don Lee, grabs one and just breaks its neck and then keeps going.
Yeah.
I definitely think when it comes to headshots, there's a level of similarity to how if you hit a normal person with head trauma, like maybe, okay, they don't feel pain if their arm is broken, they'll continue running. But if you stun them in the head, they may stay down like a real person for more time than just 2 seconds of being pushed.
Right, that's true. And you mentioned that the way the zombies, when they get together, they flow like water. That's Spence, you and I talked about World War Z, and that's very reminiscent of that.
I love that in zombie films. It's not something we see very often, is when they're running and they're running over each other like ants building a bridge. It to me is incredible, and it's one of the greatest effects you can have, because it's, in my opinion, so much more intimidating than seeing one zombie and knowing you can close the door versus seeing a million of them all at once. And you can only run, in any sense of, stopping is going to just result in that. You can't, there's no front zombie where if you can push him, the entire horde stops for a second. It's not that. It's going to get you no matter what. It becomes more like a force of nature. And I think that's super intimidating versus what we've seen prior in normal zombie, not normal, but previously zombie films. We've seen, one-on-one is a threat, versus in this, it's a threat, but it's not the threat.
Yeah, that's so true. Pat, what's your thoughts on the water flowing zombies?
I mean, I like that. It definitely gave me some World War Z type vibes. And again, it leads me to, these are parasitic creatures, or similar to how an actual virus will attack healthy cells. It's just nothing will stop them. Like, they're just all going forward, and if like one of them gets crushed or killed, like, it doesn't matter, because invariably when you have like these swarms of zombies, like, there are obstacles on the ground, or like people, or whatever, some sort of impediment. Like, some of them are going to fall, and then that'll cascade a bunch of them. But because there's so many of them just coming, like, they'll crush the ones that are underneath of them, but it doesn't matter. Like, as long as it's almost like when we talk about The Thing, as long as there's one healthy cell, like, it's still going to keep going. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
It's weird.
Right, exactly. Hi, this is Rigor, host of Then Is Now podcast and The East Meets the West. I just wanted to say thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. We appreciate your support as we grow the audience for our shows. You could find our links to our Patreon page as well as our TeePublic page at havenpodcasts.com. With Patreon, you'll get a lot of exclusive stuff, including our monthly pop culture newsletter, cool gifts, discounts for TeePublic, and our special exclusive show, Then Is Now Filmmakers series, in which we interview directors, producers, writers, composers, special effects guys, basically anybody who works behind the scenes in film and television, and get their insights into the process of creating films and TV shows. Also at our TeePublic page, you'll find cool merch that you can get or even give to others as gifts. You can find those links at our website, or you can go directly to tpublic.com/stores/havenpodcasts and patreon.com/thenisnowpodcast. Enjoy!
Hello, this is Rod Barnett. I'm the host of The Bloody Pit, the podcast that examines films from across the decades. On The Bloody Pit, we have several ongoing series of shows within the show focused on specific things in genre cinema that I and my co-hosts find fascinating. There's a long-running series focused on Italian maestro Antonio Margheriti's films from the 1960s all the way up through 1990. There's an on-again, off-again series focused on 1970s science fiction films. There's an in-depth look at the Western movies that William Castle made before he struck out on his own and became the horror auteur that we know and love. A look at the classic Coffin Joe films from Brazil. And our long-term project to look at every Universal horror film made in the 1940s. That's a long project, people. It's going to take us a long time. Sprinkled in amongst those are various other episodes focused on other stranger areas of cinema, like Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, and even some obscure British crime films from time to time. So join me and my rotating crew of co-hosts as we examine the stranger side of cinema through an exploitation lens. Except when we don't? Yeah, you never really know exactly what to expect on The Bloody Pit. So join me for The Bloody Pit.
Shark Bites Podcast. It's the greatest show in history. From the Dorkening Network, hosted by a nerd who's named Patsy. From movie reviews to tips on surviving the coronavirus, Shark Bites has it all. Follow us on Facebook and suggest topics at sharkbitespod@gmail.com. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
So moving on now, Spence. I know you have to leave soon.
Yes.
I wanted to bring up the social messages that are in this film, which is cool because it's very similar to how Romero did his zombie films. He always had some kind of a social angle he was sort of slipping in as a subtext. The most obvious one, of course, is that in the contemporary world, ambition's the most crucial ability in order for someone to ascend the ladder of the socioeconomic environment. And so the zombie infestation kind of serves as an allegory of that, where it's basically dog eat dog, and that's the rule of law. You've got the separation of the passengers, which sort of is an allegory between the gap of the rich and the poor, where you've got, the rich people will do anything to protect their safe environment or literally save their own asses without giving a shit at all for the have-nots. The protagonists, the good guys who are sort of represent the quote-unquote have-nots, they have to give every inch of their power and self-sacrifice in order to survive. And this sort of represents class rebellion as the only way for them to achieve equality with the higher class. And also, the big things I noticed about this movie, especially this go-around, is selfishness and self-preservation. When Seok Woo closes the door on Don Lee, and Don Lee is pissed off about that. It's like, you know, you could imagine, you know, people might have the instinct to protect their loved ones, their family members, but it's far from extending that to their neighbors or other people. And I think, you know, in my opinion, Seok Woo, he learned more than just how to, you know, appreciate his daughter, but also like the selflessness of some of the other characters, you know, and how to be selfless himself. I mean, Spence, what do you think about that?
I fully see it. There's multiple times where the zombies feel like they're about to get one of the important characters, and it actually is Don Lee ends up saving them. There's a big moment where a zombie's running towards the daughter, Suan, and at the very last second gets body checked by this massive dude, and that's one of those moments where you're like, okay, we definitely like this guy. We need to keep him around. So I can absolutely see that, especially with them climbing the train. I mean, his idea of fighting is putting on arm braces and that's it, and going toe to toe, fisticuffs. Where even the baseball player and our hedge fund manager did have some level of weapons to fight with.
Oh yeah,
he was just ready. He was ready to go for it, and I really appreciated that. When it comes to the social aspects, there was also a quick moment at the beginning when the train is playing the news, and the two old ladies, one of them says, "Oh, people will riot over anything these days. In my day, they'd be re-educated." And I actually learned a little bit of, apparently that line has a lot of meaning for a South Korean audience, way more than it would to an American audience, because like a re-education camp was apparently a real problem way back in the you know, in the middle of the 20th century. That was much more of a prevalent idea, and how things went, and keeping the status quo going. So I don't know all the implications, but I know that line has a lot more to it than just a throwaway or meant to be any level of comic relief.
Wow, that's interesting. I wondered about that. You know, also too, when the sister sees her other sister sacrifice herself at the end, she gets a little pissed off, and she's basically under her breath, even though she's not really talking to anyone. She kind of not really curses her out, but she's, you know, oh, you're always, you know, doing things for other people and putting other people ahead of your own self, you know. And I've got the impression, watching it this time, that that's a huge problem in South Korea. That people can't generally do that.
Yeah, a lot of the characters definitely were not interested in helping other people. I mean, even our own hedge fund manager, he closes the door on this family, you know, the husband and wife, who have a good amount of space between them and the zombies. There's no moment where it's like, come on, let's go, and closes the door just in time. He was ready to sacrifice them and call it a day, which in my opinion was a very much a Telltale Games moment. I was fully expecting that to come back to haunt him. And what I mean by that is Telltale Games is a game studio that made a version of The Walking Dead, but it wasn't necessarily a zombie game. It was more about, you know, the moral choices of, do you save this person? Do you save that person? You know, do you go for this resource or that resource? And like your choices will affect the story. And some people die and some people live and some people like you and that kind of deal. So I was fully expecting that to have implications of when he needs to run to the door and our big guy has the door, he was going to close it on him. But then when he doesn't, that's a big moment of, it doesn't matter that you wronged me before, you still need to survive this onslaught with me.
Right, exactly. And one other point, Spence, and then we'll let you get out of here. The father there, Sung Woo, doesn't ever say I love you to the daughter at all. In fact, Don Lee and his wife don't say that to each other as well. It's like, I wonder if that's not as common in South Korea as it is here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like that's a cultural and a language thing. I definitely think so, because there's very much this like clear intimacy and caring about each other when it comes to the individual families that are going on. I mean, there's the two sisters, the husband and wife, the father and daughter, the boyfriend girlfriend. There's all different kinds of relationships that are trying to be established and surviving this thing. And yeah, I think it was a big thing noticing for me also of, they don't say I love you, but it's really becomes more about actions and caring about your own family. and stuff like that. So I wonder if that's just a language thing. I don't know anything about the language of Korean, but it might just be one of those expressions where they said it in their own way, and we as English speakers can't comprehend that. That's what I interpret.
Well, Spence, thanks for joining us. I know you got to run now. You got a train to catch. No pun intended. You really do.
I really do. All right. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Take care,
awesome.
man.
Adios.
All right. See ya. So, Pat, your thoughts on the social messages in this movie?
I mean, coming from, I don't have a South Korean perspective, so it's a little bit more difficult for me because I'm looking at it through the lens of, what I'm used to as, an American. So what I'm seeing, what we were just talking about, like the whole, like, oh, he never says I love you to your daughter. Whereas like in every single movie that's made here or made specifically for American audiences, there's always like right before they sacrifice, like, I love you. Think about A Quiet Place, when John Krasinski sacrifices himself, spoiler alert. That's the last thing he did, because the whole time the daughter's like, oh, he doesn't even like me. Ooh. Just because I got my brother killed because I'm an idiot. But like that whole thing is, something that we are used to and what we expect. But having never even set foot in South Korea, let alone live there long enough to observe customs and traditions and, really be, deeply involved in either of those things, like, I don't know. Like we expect certain things, it's almost like cut and paste for American audiences. But you're coming at from a completely different perspective.
Well, I found this on a website called Filmosophy, and I thought it was interesting. I just wanted to read it because it's sort of, I have the same issue. We don't really know a lot about South Korea. So I thought this was kind of informative here. It says, social hierarchy in South Korea is particularly complex and ruthless. Conformity and social expectations, place of birth, job, place of residence, accent, and clothing all factor into the endless judgment of status in the country, which rises from a complex web of history and development that has culminated in an autocratic, work-driven society that pays the majority of its workforce, with large numbers of migrant laborers that are distinguished from expats, in another example of hierarchy, a severely low wage. They're paid a severely low wage. In such a consumerist society, social mobility becomes primary motivation, and in South Korea, according to Seoul-based economics professor Ju-Bing Shi, the best way to get rich currently is to be born that way. Inequality of opportunity will make it increasingly difficult for poor children to move up, which is expected to lead to more conflict between different social classes. So there's a lot. They're a lot different than we are.
Yeah. Although, the only way to get rich is to be born that way. Yeah, that's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, not entirely that dissimilar from America.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, yeah, you can work at it, here. At least here you have the opportunity to, maybe if you have a business concept, an idea, you can make it happen. I mean, that of course is the American dream. So, the one other thing too about that is that the zombies the horde represents the fact of these people who are simply drones in the horde, and they're the working class that are ignored. So I just thought that was cool. It was subtle enough. I didn't feel like the messages that the director was trying to bring to us was hitting us over the head. I really felt like they were there if you looked for them, but if you weren't looking for them, you still enjoyed a great story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just got a few more notes here on the film here too. I thought the opening, the way it began, it reminded me of Shaun of the Dead, where it starts off with the guy hits the deer, and the deer, of course, dies, but then he doesn't see it come back to life. But he ends up at a quarantine zone, and they're poo-pooing it, saying, "Oh, don't worry, it's just a minor leak," And then Seok Woo sees a news story about mysterious fish deaths on his computer. Him and the daughter going to the train station. A bunch of fire engines and police cars rush by, and there's a building that's on fire. And it just reminded me of the beginning of Shaun of the Dead, where there were a lot of little things going on in the background, sort of building up this whole thing.
Yeah, it's kind of giving you like the subtle hints without beating you over the head. Like it's like, oh, here's some weird things that are happening around here. But like,
Right.
Yeah, no, I get you. Like it definitely like there are a few movies that can do stuff like that where like they'll give you some subtle hints as opposed to either beating you over the head or just like, oh, we don't know what happened. Like it's just, oh, magic. Anytime you see something like that, a wizard did it.
Right.
Like just such random stuff. But no, I think it's definitely a parallel there. And where Shaun of the Dead is an homage, as we talked about, to so many other zombie films. Not even an homage, more like a love letter.
Right.
It's not surprising that, maybe Train to Busan saw that and was like, ooh, like we could do that with our film, not Train to Busan. Yan Sang-ho, writing and directing it, because Train to Busan is not the writer or director.
Right.
Jesus. Sorry, I was at a rap party till late last night. And
man.
Somebody bought $400 tequila.
Oh, my God.
I now know what $400 tequila tastes like.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm not a tequila guy. Like, this is not good. Like, like, oh, I'm so used to tequila. It's like this, clear stuff that you get, it's like, oh yeah, it's a $60 bottle. Oh, this was like golden and tasted amazing.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. I mean, I'm not a huge tequila person myself, but I will enjoy a good one, and that sounds like it would be most enjoyable.
Yeah, it didn't suck.
Oh, man. So I wanted to know, Pat, what your thoughts were about how this whole outbreak is connected to Seok-woo's business as a fund manager. I know at the beginning, another one of the subtle things was he was telling one of his lackeys to sell something, I guess I assume stocks. But do you have a better insight as to what was going on there, what the connection was?
My guess it was, some company that they were representing that, or some company that's like, oh, we're illegally dumping stuff, but like they're tying it up in the courts so that like they can continue dumping stuff to keep their stock prices high and keep making profits. And, it's like a small environmental thing. Like that's the only thing I can think of. Like maybe his company was like, doing something, like they represented him somehow. Like it wasn't specifically his company that was literally doing it, but it was someone that they represented or like was a partner of theirs.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So I couldn't figure it out. And usually a lot of the business stuff just goes over my head. And it's funny, speaking of that, you made me think of there's the one scene where they're in the bathroom trying to figure out, like trying to calculate out how many more tunnels there are so they can go through the zombie infested carts, or what do you call them, train cars, with while they're in the tunnel. And because Seok-woo is a fund manager and he deals in math, you could see him kind of thinking, and the gears turning in his head. And he's like, well, if we're going 165 miles an hour and blah blah blah, there should be 3 more in the next 2 miles.
Yes.
Which is great because I can't do that. I do words. I don't do numbers.
Yeah, the math thing, like obviously, like he's that's his bread and butter, so to speak. But I think that the whole thing was specifically tailored for his character. It's like, okay, we're gonna have somebody that is allowed to do this. It's not like he's an action star, like
right.
You know what I mean? Like they're whenever you have a film, you have like this ensemble cast, you have all these different people with a lot of different skill sets, and you have like the one guy. It's like, oh well, this guy's good at computers, this guy's good at math, and like Spency was talking about, like the big huge guy that was just like punching his way through the horde. Like these people all have their own specific skill set, and like they have to be there in order for the story to play out the way it plays out. So I kind of like that. It's like he's kind of a jerk, but like the stuff that he's been doing for his entire life is what really assisted them and helped them get to the next point in the film.
Yeah, yeah, I did too. I thought that was really good. There's one funny moment where there's a government guy on the TV, and he says, "To the best of our knowledge, your safety is not in jeopardy." Meanwhile, they're showing a picture of the city practically on fire.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, everything's fine, nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah. Now, speaking of, we were just talking about Seok Woo and his character. He finds out over the phone from a buddy of his that the stop that the train's making, if they were to go out to the main square, they'd end up in quarantine. So the buddy tells him to go to the East Square. So him and the daughter are kind of, as the people are disembarking the train, heading for the main square, they kind of try to slip out the side, even though the daughter's like, well, we need to tell the others. And he's like, no, we're not telling anyone. And the homeless guy, who, by the way, turns out to be an awesome character, even though he hasn't bathed probably in 6 or 8 months. Um, but I thought that was an interesting conundrum because if it were me, I would have at least told, like, the pregnant couple and the two old ladies and, basically the main characters that they've been introducing us to. I would have at least whispered it to them.
Yeah.
Don't go there, especially the old ladies.
Yeah, like be nice to the old ladies. See, if I'm in a survival situation such as this,
That's true.
and there's, I look at everybody, it's like, okay, you're really old, and even if we were to try and help you get to safety, you're still going to slow us down, and you're going to be a detriment. Like if somebody was like, they had a broken ankle and they couldn't run,
right?
It's like, sorry, Jerry, but
yeah,
you're the sacrifice because, he's like, yeah, I get it. Like, because even, I don't know if you've seen Black Summer, which if you haven't, it's one of the best zombie things I have ever seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's kind of like the Game of Thrones of zombie stuff where, Walking Dead, it's like, oh no, Rick's surrounded by zombies. Oh, I wonder if he's going to get killed. It's like, nope, he's going to be in the next 7 seasons. With this, anybody could go at any time and for any reason. There's a part where, there's somebody running and it's like, all right, you're kind of slowing me down. Bam, shot in the face. Like, it's like, whoa, that was a main character.
Oh my God.
Like, this was a guy that we've been following for like a while, and all of a sudden, like, just done. Like, it's so crazy, like, how this stuff happens. But it's like, everybody's in survival mode. It's like, okay, there's a ton of zombies chasing us. This person has, a cast on their leg, or, they've suffered a gunshot and like they're struggling to keep up. It's like, okay, well, you're going to die so that I can live.
Yeah. That's crazy. Black Summer, is that like on Netflix or something?
Yes. There's 2 seasons on Netflix, and when I found the first one, I just blew through the whole thing. Like, I was like, this is amazing.
I'll have to definitely check that out. That just reminds me of that old joke, the 2 Christians are tossed into the Colosseum and the lion's coming towards them, and one Christian leans down and starts putting sneakers on. The other one goes, "Oh, you think those are gonna help you outrun the lion?" And he goes, "No, I just have to outrun you."
Right, that's the secret. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your slow friend.
Yeah. Oh man. There's so many good things about this movie, and like I said before, we're not going to get into the special effects, but if you guys get a chance to look them up on YouTube, they're really amazing. And it's funny how, like, in the last quarter, I really liked the fact that the good guys, the first 3/4 of the movie is them kind of, reacting to what's going on. But then in the last quarter, we've got the main set of good guys who have to rescue their loved ones and get to the final car. And I love that they have to think their way through each car. They have to figure out ingenious ways of not only bypassing the zombies, but getting to the other side alive. I love that about this movie.
Yeah, it gives you a different, like, because we've talked about this before. Like, there's so many different takes on the zombie genre and so many different things where it's like, oh, like this is going to happen or that's going to happen, or, like you can kind of, it's formulaic and where it's going, what's going to happen next. With this, throwing the train element, throwing a train or a submarine or a boat, some sort of, different setting I think that works really well because it's like when you're on a train, most people have either been on a train like a subway or something, and you're able to, or at least seen one, so you're familiar with the layout, and it's just like the same thing. It's like, yeah, there's chairs, but it's just like over and over and over and over. You just right down the line. It's the same thing over and over again.
And the thing is, too, one of the things that you sort of have in the back of your mind in this one is that at some point they're going to run out of cars to run to for safety.
Yeah. It's like you don't have like this infinite, like it's like, oh, I'll just move to the next car and the next car. Like how many times have we seen that in movies? Predator 2 comes immediately to mind. Like, they're just trying to push people speed. Like there's so many of these.
I thought the luggage rack crawl scene was pure genius.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the characters finally get to the last car, and of course, douchebag won't let them in, and he's got all the people convinced that the good guys are infected somehow. And even when they finally get through and Seok-woo jumps him, the way he gets out of being basically having the shit kicked out of him, he tells everyone he's infected, and the thing that I thought was interesting was in this film, basically all the people in that car start screaming at the good guys to get out. It's irrational. And, we as the audience know it's completely irrational because we've been with these characters. We know they're not infected. But if this was an American movie and I was Seok-woo, I would have been jumping up and down with both hands, giving them the middle finger, going, fuck you, I'm not infected. We aren't going anywhere, you asshole.
Yeah. It's always an interesting way of how the characters should react. And you're like, oh, wow, why don't they do this? And it's like, I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it could have been at that point, too. They were just so beat down. They were like, whatever, we'll just go to the next car,
Yeah. But I'd be like, are you guys seriously listening to this asshole? Like, have you not seen what he's been doing the entire time?
Right.
He'll do anything to save his own ass, including throw small girls in front of zombies.
Right. Dick. One thing oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I said he's such a tool.
Yeah. One thing I loved was that Seok-woo on his phone, his ex-wife is listed as ex-wife.
Yeah, I mean, that's very, matter of fact, kind of like the episode of The Office where they were getting ready for somebody's birthday and Dwight put up the banner that just said, "It is your birthday." Like, just black and white, "It is your birthday." Like, it wasn't even, it was just like, one long sheet of paper. And it's like, and Jim's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "But like, this is accurate. Like, it is their birthday." It's like, yeah, but it's like, yeah, you're right, but don't be a jerk.
That's funny. What's his name? The guy that played Dwight was just on an episode of Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal Podcast recently. It was really...
Rainn Wilson.
Rainn Wilson, yeah. Him and another guy were on there. It was really good. Promoting another show that's not mine, but it was really good. Now, we're getting towards the end of the film here, and of course, Seok-woo says to Young-suk, when they finally encounter each other on that last train car that's moving on its own, he says, "You're infected." Which Suk doesn't even realize this, and I just love the irony that he was telling everyone that Seok-woo was infected when he wasn't, but now he's really infected and doesn't know it. And Seok-woo has to say, well, dude, you're infected.
Yeah, he does suck.
Yeah.
He's just the worst.
Oh, man. And that was the thing, too, that fucking end fight. I didn't like the fact that, spoiler alert, Suk bites Seok on the hand, and of course, after he makes sure that the girls are safe, he's gonna, sacrifice himself because he doesn't want to turn around and eat them. And I kind of was like, the first time I saw it, I was a little pissed. I really wished he had survived. But the other thing too is when he's fighting Suk, the guy's got a necktie on. He could have grabbed it and pulled it tight and used it to hold the guy at bay so he couldn't bite him or anyone else. And that, I mean, I suppose, life or death situation, you may not necessarily think of things like that, but that's the first thing I thought of when I saw the guy. I'm like, you don't want him to bite you. grab his tie and pull it tight and keep your hand under his chin, you know?
I would
You agree?
grab the tie and like just keep punching him like one of those like bop it things.
Like a Three Stooges thing.
Yeah, like just just pull the tie and then his face comes out and you punch him, and then his head pops back and then you pull the tie back and just keep hitting him like that.
Oh man. Now, when you first saw this and you saw the girls walking through the tunnel and the soldiers were looking at them, did you think it was going to end up like Night of the Living Dead?
I was prepared for it to go either way.
Yeah.
Because like there is that like really like tense moment there where you're like maybe one of them goes down. It's like you don't know, but like you think it could be at least one of them, but then everything's okay and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And everything's fine.
Well, thank God she was singing that Hawaiian song. Yeah.
But it's I don't know. It's I think it's fun.
It's definitely good. Did you notice at the very end too, with the soldiers in the background, they had machines moving those giant container units, the same kind. They were building a wall basically, just like in Army of the Dead, which we had talked about in the second episode. And as a sidebar, I noticed I was at a bar last night before we went to the movie, and there was a news on the TV, and they were showing this giant machine that had two of those containers, and not side by side. They were actually, the long way, touching each other the long way, and this giant thing holding two of them. So it seemed more efficient. So you could almost conceive that if they had enough around, they could quickly build a wall,
Yeah. I mean, I think it would have been, it would have, kind of, sent the film in a different direction, I think. But I do agree with you.
Yeah. And who knows? I don't think there was any chance of walling off Busan rather than walling yourself into a safe space,
Yeah, like I don't think it's going to happen. But at least they didn't just like, throw a bunch of storage containers around the city.
Right. So, Pat, final thoughts on Train to Busan?
I really like this. I definitely need to check out the
prequel,
Peninsula and Seoul Station.
Yeah,
because I like the animation style for Seoul Station. I need to check these out because they look phenomenal. But yeah, I really like this, and I think if you're a fan of the zombie genre and you want to see something unique and interesting and like have characters that you can actually get emotionally invested in, like we kept talking about, what's his name? Y'all suck. Like which is a testament to that actor and that character and the writing, because like you hate that character so much. We can't stop talking about him. So like
right.
that's an emotional investment. You care about what happens to him. Like you care about his ultimate fate. You want to know, is he going to die? Like, how is he going to die? And, so I think they do a great job of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I friggin' love this movie. It's fast paced, keeps you on edge. The characters, like you said, are wonderful. And when any one of the good guys gets killed, you're genuinely upset as an audience member. You're like, oh man, really? Oh. That the acting was great, the directing, the cinematography, the special effects, it was all top notch, and it was just a damn good story. Which, in my mind, and I don't think I'm the only one that thinks this, but I think this movie managed to revitalize the zombie genre. This came out 2016. The zombie genre seemed like it was starting to fade away, and I think this movie revitalized that. And in tying this into the whole Romero thing, Romero's world of zombies, while these zombies followed the rules of the 28 Days Later zombies, which of course came in the wake of Romero's films, the social subtext here makes it more than just a simple horror action movie. There's a lot more to it and a lot of layers to it, and I think it's one of those films that you kind of sort of find things every time you watch it again. You see things that you didn't notice before, and I think that makes for a great movie. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I don't think we'd be talking about movies that are terrible, but I mean we could. Like, oh, yeah, definitely don't watch this. This is awful.
Yeah, yeah. There will be B movies that we may talk about someday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind.
Okay, folks, thank you once again for joining us today for our special 2021 13 Days of Hallowtober series, where we focus on modern zombie films. You can send your feedback to thenisnow42@gmail.com. You can also join in the conversation at our Facebook Then Is Now podcast group.
And you can follow me on the Throwdown Thursday podcast Facebook group. You can check out throwdownthursdaypodcast.com for latest episodes and some fun articles. And I want you to know that the Then Is Now podcast is a proud member of the Dorkening Podcast Network, so be sure to check out all the other great shows. There's about 743 different shows at thedorkening.com. You can also check out the Dorkening Podcast Network on Facebook. You can also visit our website at havenpodcast.com, where you'll find our sister show, the award-winning East Meets the West, in which we discuss Shaw Brothers films and spaghetti western movies.
That's right. And don't forget, while you're at our website, click on the links for TeePublic and Patreon to get some great swag and exclusive stuff that you can't get anywhere else, including our Filmmakers series of shows. And Then Is Now is also on YouTube, so please visit youtube.com/user/UncleDeath1 to get the latest videos as well as other fun videos. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and also share the video versions of our podcast with your friends and get them to subscribe as well. Don't forget, when you subscribe on YouTube, you got to hit that little bell so you get alerts when we have new videos come out. And don't forget to go wherever you download your podcast from and leave us a great review so that more listeners can find us. You can find us on all the podcasting catchers and apps, especially the big three: iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. Class dismissed.
The Then Is Now podcast is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. Sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is copyright Jupiter Media.
For more shows like the one you just heard, check out the Dorkening Podcast Network at thedorkening.com.